Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Play Choices podcast, a podcast you hear. I'm your host, V.
Hi, I'm the co-host Lucas.
So this episode is a new format for us. We're actually doing a Q&A today. So this is probably going to be, these questions they're very expansive, and I didn't necessarily organize them by topic because I just wasn't going to do that shit. So just know that these questions are kind of a free-for-all. Almost. Like, I would say it's not going to be limited to any particular book or any particular type of theme. Just know that going in, that this is definitely a spoiler cast, and we're going to be free to talk about whatever we want to talk about in order to answer the questions that we got.
Period.
Yeah, so these are listener submitted questions. It's actually a pretty long list. Like, I don't think I realized when I was compiling it how long it is, but it's quite a long list. So I would say, let's just jump into it. Are you ready?
I'm ready. No monologue.
So these are wild, wild, wild west questions, some of them.
My anxiety? Oh God. Okay.
Okay. So the first one is, what inspired you to do the podcast? Okay.
Oh.
So let me go back into the history of this podcast for some people who may not be as informed, I guess, for basically how this podcast got started. So I decided to start this podcast. Hi, it's me, V. I decided to start this podcast in 2019. Basically, I was just like, I was living by myself at the time. And I just feel like a lot of times in the evenings, like after work, I would just listen to podcasts a lot, just to, like, fill the silence. That sounds so sad. But like, I just like to have music or podcasts or TV or something playing whenever I do live by myself and I'm not interacting with other people. So I was just listening. It was a very podcast heavy portion of my life, I guess. And I was listening to a lot of them. And this was like, y'all know I call 2019 the golden era of choices. And there were just so many great books in particular that I just wanted to kind of talk about. Like, I just wanted somebody to talk about them with. And I was like, well, I listen to a lot of podcasts, and that's a medium where, you know, people can talk about really anything. I mean, you can find podcasts on any type of topic. And I just wondered, how far-fetched it would be for me to start a podcast about choices in particular. So I did some research, didn't find any other podcast at the time that was doing it. To my knowledge, we're the first podcast that exists specifically about choices. I don't want to say about visual novels in general, but for choices in general, based off of the research I had done 2 years ago now, I think this was the first one. I asked everybody, like, how would you feel about a choices podcast? And I got a lot of really good reception. And so that was kind of the motivator behind doing the podcast for me. Now, Lucas, you joined me like in our second episode. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, like, I guess you can answer the question of what motivated you to kind of hop on.
I grew up playing a different visual book app called Episodes.
Oh,
And so I knew that Choices had the same structure and it was something that you were interested in. And it just seemed like a good idea to like share this with you and build a community for ourselves.
yeah, say I'm still pretty happy with the idea. Pretty happy that we decided to do this. So, hope that answers your question. Someone else asked, actually, it may have been the same person that asked us. You started a podcast and then went on hiatus. That is true. We started the podcast in 2019 and then I stopped after the first episode and I came back in early 2021. Quite a long hiatus. Were you unsure about the podcast or changing angles?
Ooh. I'm gonna just sip my tea.
Right. Yeah, no, this is definitely a V focused question. Something that is brave yet controversial for me to say. I'm still unsure about the podcast every day. I think every day about like what type of episode formats or what we're going to talk about in the next episode. Like, this is a podcast that I literally work on every day. Like, there are very few days that I go without working on the podcast in some capacity, whether it's editing the audio, creating the social media content. Like, I'm just always working on the podcast throughout the week. So yeah, I think about the podcast a lot. And we're still like, Lucas and I have like regular conversations about the future of the podcast and like what direction we want to take it in. So it's just I have to respond like that because the question was phrased, "Were you unsure about the podcast?" I'm still unsure. I'm still unsure. And to make that even more clear, kind of in like the end of 2020 when I had remembered that I had this podcast and I still had everything up, right? I had like the YouTube channel up and everything. And I actually thought about deleting it at a certain point. Like at the end of 2020, I was like, maybe I should just delete this shit. Like why is this still up? And I decided not to delete it, and I was sitting on it, and I went, well, why did I stop? Like I just started to ask myself questions like, why did I stop doing this? Yeah, no, I was very unsure about rebooting it, and I would still say to this day I'm unsure about it. But it's not an unsure like I don't even know if I should be doing this podcast. Like it's not that type of unsure, but it is unsure in the sense of like where I feel like I'm constantly reevaluating what we're doing and kind of like wondering if it's the best way to do it. Lucas, I don't know if you have any opinions you want to share.
No, that was all you, boo.
All right. Someone asked what our first impressions of each other were.
Oh my god,
This
are you
this is
kidding
a
me?
deep cut because we've known each other since
For
like middle
so fucking
school.
long. Okay, like, oh my god, guys, we've literally grown with each other. Like,
Yeah.
I met her when I was in 6th grade and she was in 5th grade.
Actually, I think you were in seventh grade because you were a grade older than me, and we met in my sixth grade year. So yeah,
Oh, and then I dated her best friend.
yeah. So my best friend, who I'm still best friends with today, they
Mhm.
dated, which is so funny because like I don't think you've dated a woman since.
She was my last one. Yeah, she was my last one. Like, yeah, I'm still cordial with her. I mean, it didn't end badly,
Yeah, no,
but
they don't hate
yeah,
each other. It just you don't date someone and you just kind of become cordial with each other. It's so funny because like I think like we'll get into conversations about you like occasionally, and her husband will be like, "Who are you talking to?" And she's like, "Oh yeah, my boyfriend from middle school."
yes, yes. And me and V, we just started talking on the phone after that, and that just continued for like years and years and years and years.
Yeah. First impressions is hard to answer because I don't even know if I really like remember.
I remember you and my ex were outside in a tent. I don't know why the
Yes.
fuck you guys were in a
Y'all,
fucking.
you know when you're a kid and you just like, oh, I just gotta do, because we had slept over at each other's houses like thousands of times. And so for some reason, her and I thought like, oh, we'll just sleep outside in a tent. And I can't remember if it was you who called us or if it was her who called you, but somebody called somebody and we just spent like the entire night like outside talking
Yes,
to each other.
yes. And then the first time we met in person was probably some school dance, some middle school dance that we like
Mm-hmm.
had to sneak behind.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's very hard because like I feel like I've always known you, so to
Yeah,
pinpoint
it's so long ago.
when I
Like it's like
first met you,
I
mm-mm,
can't even like really remember like what my first impression of you was, or
mm-mm.
like I can't even remember that transition between like the tent. Like I remember the tent thing, but I don't remember
Me
how that
either.
transitioned to us being friends. Like I
But
don't.
me, like it's like I've always talked to you on the phone, but I know that's not the case. Like I don't know what the
Yeah.
initial like it's crazy.
Yeah, I'm so sorry to the person who asked that question because I really don't. I mean, clearly I thought there was something like nice about you in order to
Yeah.
continue talking to you and being friends with you, but like I really can't. It's just so long ago.
Mm-hmm.
Next question is, what characters do you think represents you best?
Oh no, that's good. Wow,
Mm,
that's good.
this is oh bitch.
Oof.
It's
Wait,
harder for you because you know less characters. But on the other hand, it's harder for me because I know more. So now I have to like
It's literally
we're approaching this from a very different perspective from each other. I'm actually literally Googling as we speak the Choices wiki so I can look at all of the books. Oh, well, I have one obvious answer because I kind of alluded to it in a previous episode, but I have one obvious answer for when I was younger and I have a different answer for me now.
oh.
But let me make sure I really feel this way.
I think I have a good before and after for
Okay.
you too, only because we talked about it in
Feel
one of
free.
our
Feel free to
episodes.
go.
Okay, so I think. Oh my god, what is her name? Oh my god, the main
Which
character
book?
of oh god, Ride or Die. What is her name?
Ellie.
Ellie?
Ellie. Hmm.
Ellie. Past Ellie. Present. Out of all the characters of the books that I've encountered so far, I feel like I
Right,
have
and
to give
remember
you
that Lucas has not played a lot of these books, so we're gonna
right,
have to give him
right.
some grace when it comes to these type of questions.
So if I had to give you a present character that you embody, it would be Aurora from Open Heart. Because I just feel like she's excelling in her family's expectations of her, and she's a very career goal orientated woman, and she just gives me bad boss vibes. Like, love her.
I could see that. I could see that. For me, very similar beginning of or earlier in my life, definitely Ellie. I mean, I was just wilding out, doing whatever I could to gain some sense of like freedom in my life when I was younger. But now that I'm older, I just feel like very like settled.
Mm-hmm.
And this Lucas, you're not going to understand this one because it's from a book you haven't played yet. But if I had to pick one that kind of represented me, it would be the MC from like Mother of the Year, but like less struggle, if that makes sense. Because like Mother of the Year, I mean, it's about a mom who is just like she's just trying to settle in and like make her life like cozy and like comfortable, and she struggles a lot. Like there's a lot about her background that kind of like makes her life more challenging. I definitely don't face like nearly even the same number of hardships that the MC faces in Mother of the Year, but I do relate to her kind of like goal in life, which is like just to create like a comfortable life for herself. Like I think it's
Mm-hmm.
ultimately what she's chasing. And I relate a lot to that. Like to be honest, at a very young age, I've achieved a lot. And so, like, really, all I'm trying to do, like, I've talked to Lucas about this. Like, I'm kind of tired of like chasing milestones. Like, I just kind of want to settle and like live my life for the next couple of years and just like
Mm-hmm.
enjoy like my 20s. So, I would say that that's probably the character that represents me the best off of the top of my head. The next question is, what is the worst character development you've seen in the app?
Oh my god, Pussy Plot.
Go ahead,
Puss,
go ahead, go ahead.
Pussy Plot. We're just talking about characters in general.
Yeah, like be specific when you say pussy plot.
Mm.
Like explain to them what you mean by
Okay,
pussy
so Pussy
plot.
Plot is where the only thing that's holding the story alive is a forced LI love interest. Okay. And I understand that people's opinions on that may differ because a lot of people feel like Logan and Ellie's relationship is Pussy Plot, but it's not.
I
Okay.
wouldn't say it's pussy plot. I would say like when the episode we brought it up is like the nanny affair, which I think is definitely pussy plot because the only thing that drives it forward is like their constant like horniness for each other. And like is Ellie horny for Logan? Yes, but there's also other kind of like sub elements that are going on in the plot that drives it forward. It's not just their attraction. Their attraction is what keeps the characters in the story together, but there's other things going on in the background that kind of drive it.
Period.
For me, I would have to say probably like either Witness or My First Two Loves. Witness is just a fucking disaster of like a book. Lucas, you haven't read that one yet. I feel like I'm gonna postpone us having to read that as long as possible. It's just so bad. And then My First Two Loves, I mean, you had to play 100 chapters in order to get anywhere with the main character. So yeah, no, that's definitely the worst I've seen in the app so far. Here's a really funny one. You're gonna love this one. Do we work for Pixelberry?
Child, if we did, things would make sense. You
Things would make
know.
a lot more sense and we make a lot more fucking money off of this podcast. Let me tell you something. If we work for Pixelberry. I just have to assume that question must have come from somebody who like didn't listen to our podcast, because we do not speak like super complimentary of like the content in the app. Like we're fair, like we make a lot of like really fair criticisms, I think, of the writing and of the plot. So I don't think Pixelberry would tolerate us talking about their books like that if we were actually employed by them. But no, we're not affiliated with Pixelberry in any way. And actually, I'm kind of afraid that like one of these days Pixelberry is gonna like catch wind to the fact that we're like recording about them. Like I actually try to not interact with Pixelberry on social media that much, because I'm actually kind of afraid of like what reaction they would have, if any, to our content. No, we don't work for them. We don't interact with them at all. It's actually, I think if they ever actually discovered us and like made any official reference to us, I think I would scream. So, and not in a good way. Not like fangirl screaming, but like horror screaming. Like I think I would be horrified if they actually noticed us. Okay, before we get on with the rest of the chapter, let me interrupt with some plugs. So you can leave us a voice message at anchor.fm/play-choices-podcast/message. It could show up in a future episode. You can also directly support this podcast at anchor.fm/play-choices-podcast/support. If we haven't convinced you yet, listen to this amazing, amazing commercial that Lucas and I put together for you. It
In
takes me
the
hours.
arms of an angel.
It takes me, no, keep singing. It takes me
I
hours to record. No, keep doing it.
Here
It takes me
are
hours to record and edit this podcast.
wherever you
And
are.
with your donation
I believe
of
that
$1 a
my
month
heart will
could save V from
go
smashing her fucking head
on.
into a wall.
Why does the heart
Thank you
go?
so much. And back to our episode. Someone asked, how do you come up with your topics? I feel like there's a lot of different ways to interpret this, so I'll try to answer a few of them. So how to come up with the chapters we're going to discuss? I mean, it comes down to at first I think we were doing it primarily based off of interest. Like what books I felt interested us the most and would have driven the most amount of discussion. Now it's a little bit of that and a mix of what's relevant and choices right now, right? So we're starting to kind of like release episodes on laws of attraction because that just recently released. As far as like other topics, I mean, like discussion questions, just shit that comes to my head that I want to hear Lucas's opinion on. I hope that answered the question. How do you feel about the Nanny Affair book 2?
Mm.
um,
Oh.
so as someone who has played the Nanny Affair all the way through, Lucas has not. But as someone who has, that's me. I feel curious because I just don't know where they're gonna take the plot. Like I feel like there's a lot of really good things they could do with the plot. I feel like there's a lot of things they could do to make it more spicy, make it more dramatic, make it more exciting. Because that's what the Nanny Affair is. The Nanny Affair is about the drama. It's about the build up and the anticipation to the inevitable ending we all know we're gonna get, right? So if they could recapture that essence and put it in book 2, that would be fantastic. Like I think I would enjoy it just as equally as I enjoyed book 1. But I'm nervous, bruh. I'm nervous. I'm nervous. I'm not gonna lie. Lucas?
I guess I would have to get through the first one to have like a accurate opinion
Mm-hmm.
about this.
Mm-hmm.
But if the affair thing is still going on, I got questions. That's it. That's all I'm gonna say.
I won't respond to that. I'll just let you figure out as we play through the rest of the chapters. How long have you been playing Choices? I've been playing Choices since 2017, 2018.
Oof, child. Since 2021.
2021, bitch.
I'm the Gen Z of choices, bitch.
Oh my fucking god, I'm done. You made me sound like a fucking boomer. Will you do an episode on Perfect Match? Yeah, I don't see why not. I love Perfect Match. There's no reason for us to not do an episode. That's a different book, Lucas. We haven't talked about that one yet, but Perfect Match is like one of those OG, like amazing fucking books that I love. It's like up there, like
Okay.
one of my favorite books in the app. So yeah, it's a great series. I definitely think we should do an episode on it eventually. Oh man, we can't answer this one entirely. Look, it's a great question. I may have to save this for like when we do our final episode on Ride or Die, but the question is how would you have wanted or expected Ride or Die 2 to go? We'll
How?
save that for a different episode.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, we'll have to save that. Because in order for you to give you a full answer, I'd have to spoil it, and I don't want to do that because Lucas hasn't finished reading the entire thing. What canceled book do you think most deserved a sequel? I mean, obviously, Ride or Die.
Ride or die. I
Ride or
have to say
Die.
ride or die because my ride or die says ride or die, so it's ride or die.
Obviously, Ride or Die. I think Most Wanted. I think Hero. We actually had an interesting discussion about this a couple of days ago on our Twitter page. So as we're recording this is like May 6th, and I think I posted a question basically asking people like if there's any standalone books that you're actually okay with not getting a sequel. And we got some interesting responses. I think Distant Shores is one of those books that I'm okay with not without getting a sequel. I don't know if I love the ending, but I don't think not loving the ending means that there has to be a sequel to it. So if I had to name them, I would have loved to seen a sequel on Ride or Die, but I also understand how Ride or Die is a good standalone, but I also would have loved to see a sequel just because I'm a Logan whore. Platinum is another book that I wish would have gotten a sequel because I think they had the plot to do it. Mother of the Year is another book I wouldn't have been mad if it gotten a sequel. I think it's also good as a standalone, but I think I would have been happy to see a sequel from that one. Most Wanted, Hero. And then from Lucas's perspective, I think really the only standalone you've played has been, well, Foreign Affairs and Ride or Die, I think are the only two standalones that you've played so far.
Okay. Well, death, ride or die. Foreign affairs. I guess we'll
Questionable.
see. But from how the plot's going now,
Yeah.
mm, questionable.
Yeah. For reference, I haven't played Foreign Affairs all the way through either, so I'm not 100%. Like usually we're in like this position where like I'm further ahead on the plot and you're just kind of catching up and I kind of know everything that's going to happen, but I just don't tell you from a spoiler perspective. But Foreign Affairs, I feel like from the feedback that I've heard from the fandom about it that most people are the way that it was written, they're happy that it's not getting a sequel, but I think if they had written it in a way that the fandom would approve more of it, that more people would have wanted a sequel, but unfortunately, it's just not the way that it shook out, unfortunately. What are your top 5 LIs?
Right now. Okay. Listen, these are my top. Okay, top one, Logan, Avi. 2 and 3, no particular order, but I just know they're 2 and 3. Gabe and Tatum. Okay.
Wow!
Let me hold on. Let me say the book associated with it. Okay, Logan from Ride or Die. Okay, Gabe from Law of Attraction. Okay,
Is he number 2?
but 2 and 3 is no like the person I say for 3 could easily be 2. Like they're just really even. I think Gabe and then Tatum from Foreign Affairs. They just give me so much interest from like the first encounter that like I'm really captivated by them. And then LI's 4 and 5. Oof. I even have a 4 and 5. Oh, duh. Oh, Bryce from Open Heart. Bryce from Open Heart. And then the last one, I guess would be the vampire shit.
Don't even know his name! This is what happens when you ask someone who like hasn't read that much content, like what their top 5 LIs are. So my top 5 allies, I don't really want to rank them. I know who's in the top 5, but I don't want to rank them. So obviously Logan from Ride or Die, Hayden from Perfect Match, Zig from the freshman series, Bryce from Open Heart, no, Raleigh from Platinum. Fuck, no, 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 no. Okay. I gotta kick someone out. I said Logan, Hayden. Hayden gotta go. I gotta replace him with Thomas for Mother of the Year. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry, Hayden. I love you, but Thomas. So yeah, Logan, Thomas, Zig. What did I say? Logan, Thomas, Zig, Raleigh. Who the fuck was the other one? I'm blanking. It's fine. I'll know when I edit. Okay. Do you think the story of the royal heir makes sense if your love interest is not the king? you can't really answer this because you haven't read. And to be fair, like I haven't really read the Royal Heir just because I feel like the Royal Romance series is way past its expiration date at this point. Like that needs to go. So basically, Lucas, to explain the plot of you, so the Royal Romance is like this whole courting thing where you can date a king, but you can also choose to not date the king. So I think somewhere in book 2 or 3, you get the chance to kind of accept or decline the king's proposal. I guess he's a prince at this point, but and then Royal Heir pops on, and of course it makes the most sense if you're married to the king and is having his child. That makes the most sense. But if you date someone else, basically what they say is, oh, well, the king hasn't found a partner yet. So automatically, because you're the first in the royal line to have like the next child, your child is therefore going to be next in line to be whatever royal title, basically. So if you date someone else and have a child with someone else, like your child automatically gets kind of like this isn't the right word, but kind of gets sacrificed into the royal family line because like the king doesn't have a partner to have a baby with yet. So your child just automatically gets kind of pushed to the forefront. So no, I don't think the story makes sense whatsoever. Because like it just feels like a reach.
Yeah, they're reaching. They're reaching.
Because the entire basis is that like, and I'm giving you spoilers because I don't think you're gonna like this story as much as like some of our other stories. Like I'm not as careful around giving you spoilers about the royal romance because I just don't think it's that significant. But it is such a reach because like the entire concept of royal romance books 1 through 2 is like you're courting the king. So like if you had rejected him, he could have grabbed any other woman that he was courting because it was done like Bridgerton style where it's like he's dating multiple women at one time and then he picks. So if you had rejected him, you could have just gone to someone else and had a child with them. Like it just, mm, no, I don't think it makes much sense at all. Before we continue with the rest of the episode, I do want to remind everyone that if you have any questions, theories, or comments that you would like to be included in a future episode, please email us at playchoicespodcast@gmail.com. Make sure to specify whether you want to be shouted out or not, otherwise all emails will be anonymous. Questions can be related to books we've recorded episodes on, books that we haven't discussed yet, or even questions that you'd like to ask us. Alternatively, you can go to our Ask box on playchoicespodcast.tumblr.com and submit a question. Just specify that it's for the podcast and we'll be sure to include it. And back to our episode. What draws you to a book? I'm going to answer this one first. I feel like I've been talking a lot.
Okay. What draws me to the book is definitely cover art. I'm sorry, cover art is so essential. And then next would probably be synopsis or like plot points and or a summary, a open summary, I guess. And then lastly, maybe the title. If I was just picking a book, but also since we are more podcast based and we
Mm-hmm.
get like the listeners involved, it's what you guys recommend truly.
So, from a personal reading perspective, I'm not going to touch on like for the podcast. I feel like I already kind of answered that. But from a personal reading perspective, I think right now what I'm really craving is a book that has plot beyond just looking for romance. So, if I get from the title or the teasers that Pixelberry puts out on social media that it's a primarily romance driven book, then I'm probably not going to be super excited to play it. Because I like to have a plot where the romance becomes secondary to the overall plot. So those are the type of things that draw me to a book. What would make you stop reading a book? That's an interesting question.
Ooh, damn, that's a good question. What would make me stop reading a book? I'm kind of like prideful when it comes to books that like once I start something, I have to finish it no matter how bad it is. So I don't know if I would necessarily like quit a book.
One, if I thought it was boring. Two, if I thought the character interactions were unbelievable. And three, if I thought there was going to be no payoff at the end. Because as painful as my first two loves were, I read that bitch all the way to chapter 100 because I wanted to see how the fuck it ended. Witness was a combination of all three of those things, I think, and I really gave up on that book. Like, I can't believe that they stretched the shit out to 28 chapters. Next question, Lucas. This is going to be more difficult. This is probably going to be an I only answer thing, but what are your thoughts on books like It Lives in the Woods and Endless Summer Relationship Status Meter? So Lucas, just so you have the background, in certain books they'll have like relationship meters where depending on the choices you make will kind of make other people like you more. But on the other hand, the downside is that everything you say makes someone like you, but also makes someone dislike you. So no matter what you fucking say, you pissing somebody off. I think it's really fucking irritating, to be honest. I don't really want to have to. It's annoying to think that like a game is designed to where I have to piss someone off and it impacts the end result, because usually in games like It Lives or Endless Summer, it usually determines the character's fate. Like the people who are the closest to you live and other people either die or something bad happens to them. And it's just so annoying because I don't think that like real life is like that. Like I don't think real life is in such a way that everything you say is gonna piss someone else off while also making someone else like feel closer to you. Like it just feels very frustrating because every single time I make a choice, it's like I know I'm gonna make someone angry. Like the entire time I was playing Endless Summer, I was so fucking irritated because everything I said, there were like 2 or 3 characters that just fucking hated me by the end of the book series because everything I said always pissed them off. And I was like, why are y'all so like argumentative? Like, can't I just make a simple statement without y'all trying to fight me or have some conflict? I think it's really fucking frustrating, to be honest. But I think I can at least say that I think there's a better payoff for relationship meters in It Lives series versus Endless Summer. Like in Endless Summer, I was like, what is the point of all of this? But in It Lives, there's an actual like payoff at the end of the book where it makes sense. And it kind of makes you want to spend diamonds. In Endless Summer, I don't think I spent any diamonds, so I was like, I don't give a fuck. I don't think we've come across any like real relationship meters, have we, in our books that we've read?
No, I don't think so. No, I would definitely remember that.
Yeah, not anything as explicit as like the way that it shows in It Lives or Endless Summer. Okay, this one's actually like an email. Oh, this is from Eric. What's up, Eric?
Twitter, Eric.
Twitter, Eric.
Hey, Eric. Hey, how you doing?
Okay, so Eric wrote, first, I want to say I love the podcast. Thank you, Eric. I love your tweets at us every Saturday morning, telling us how you feel about each episode. He said it is refreshing to listen to people discuss the game in a way that is appreciative but critical. It's so nice that he said appreciative because I feel like I often wonder if we criticize the app too much.
Mm,
So it's nice that he said appreciative. That kind of calms my fears a little bit.
yeah, same.
So the email continues. I was just thinking of a few things I'd like to hear discussed if you ever get a chance to fit it in. Well, this is our chance to fit it in. There are things that I've discussed with others and just curious to see others' thoughts. Number one, how effective is gender customization for main characters? And is it worth doing if they're just checking a box? My opinion is it is not worth doing if they're just going to change the book but not change storyline or dialogue, like playing a male in foreign affairs but having a female roommate. Okay, so there's a couple of questions. Let's just start with that one. The question is, how effective is gender customization for main characters? I feel a couple of ways about this. I think when you do like he she pronouns, it makes sense. For they pronouns, I still feel kind of about it because it feels like everything still feels very gendered even if you use they. Like if you
Yes,
have like a feminine body, they still have to wear feminine clothes.
yes, I agree.
And also it's like not every they person looks like super feminine or super masculine in the body that they were like in the gender they were assigned, right?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of they them like people look really androgynous, and the fact that there isn't an androgynous body type is kind of frustrating. It does feel like they're checking a box when it comes to like they them pronouns.
Yeah.
I want to let you comment on the playing male in foreign affairs but having D as your roommate. I want to let you comment on that.
It just gives me very like gay best friend vibes, which is just like such a cliche. Because I feel like if I having a male body, right? I don't know. I just feel like like they try to be inclusive, but it just comes off very dense sometimes. And I really feel like they just stick to cliches and not actually like do their research and like make a actual attempt to be, open for all users.
I feel like here's the thing. It's kind of like idealism versus reality. So it's like, do I really care if you play as a guy and you have a female roommate? Like, I've lived with men before. It doesn't necessarily bother me. I don't think it's that weird. But I do agree that it is less realistic in the way that the world handles gender to have two people of different genders living together. Especially male and female in terms of like what those different genders are. So I agree from a realism standpoint how that could seem kind of meh. But like I'd like as a woman who's lived with a man before, and as we're approaching a world where like gender becomes like less important, I think to like our Lucas's and I generation, I think that becomes like less and less important the younger that people are.
Yeah.
So I think eventually it's going to become like a non-factor. I feel like the whole like checking a box for gender thing becomes more apparent when you look at they them. I very infrequently play as a male character, so maybe there's other things that they're doing in the writing that don't make sense that I'm just not privy to because I don't play as a male character, and because I play as a female character, a lot of the books honestly do cater to me. Okay, so second question is, does Pixelberry do too much for the Facebook moms? What I call players who spend too much money on the game and clearly hate female allies. Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah, same.
Yeah, we'll just leave it at that. Yes, we agree with that. 3, should more books be single love interests since they tend to be better books than ones with multiple love interests? For example, With Every Heartbeat and A Very Scandalous Proposal are so much better than Wolf Bride since they can focus on the story and on one love interest rather than getting into a situation where one interest is forced too hard like Ethan and Open Heart.
Mm.
Here's what I'll say. I see where you're going with that. I don't necessarily agree with that take. I think there are great books that have multiple love interests that feel equally balanced. Well, let me back that shit up. Ride or Die is a book that has multiple love interests where I think they are very beloved in the fandom. Logan, Cult, Mona, I think all three of them are very beloved in the fandom. In the beginning, it's very forced. I think as we get deeper into the plot, Lucas, you'll see that I think it becomes a little bit more even.
Okay.
Maybe a little bit less for Mona, but I think between Colt and Logan, I think you get more time, I guess, I would say, to explore them. So I think that, here's what I'll say. I think the issue with forcing a love interest is a writing problem with Pixelberry and not necessarily with how many love interests there are. If they could find a way to write in an equal amount of time, and I mean, equal is kind of, it's a slippery term, right? Because there are going to naturally be some characters who, like, if you work with somebody versus if, like, you go to a restaurant that an LI manages, like, you're going to see the restaurant LI less, right? That isn't a slow burn, by the way. I haven't played slow burn, so don't come at me if that fits a narrative or something in that book. But I think that the issue is a writing problem, not necessarily a multiple LI problem. I think, for example, like The Nanny Affair is a book that has a single LI, and I think that's something in the first couple of chapters we've had some frustration with. And I wouldn't necessarily say that by definition The Nanny Affair is a better book than a book like Ride or Die. I think it very much depends on how you write it. Lucas, feel free to give your opinion.
As long as the single LI stories and books have good plot, I'm for it. But sometimes, like, I feel like the introduction of multiple LIs does create plot, and then there are some books that also have multiple LIs that are just pussy plot. So, like, it's very hard to answer that question because most, like, I've seen bad versions of every single LI
Mm-hmm.
book, and also, well, actually, no, the only single LI book I've played is The Nanny Affair.
Nanny Affair. Mm-hmm.
Wow. Well, okay, as it stands with just playing the books that I've played, multiple LI books, because the only single LI book I've played, I feel wrong because technically I'm in an affair. Like, it's not captivating to be like to be forced into a box of like Homewrecker.
There's good and bad books of both single and multiple that I feel like just limiting it to this like subset of Every Heartbeat and AVSP is very good, and then Wolf Bride is bad. Wolf Bride is bad for instances also outside. I mean, this is me calling it prematurely, but based off of what I've read from the fandom, it seems like Wolf Bride is bad for reasons outside of the fact that there's multiple allies. But I'm not faulting Eric for that. Like I see what Eric is getting at. I don't think I feel comfortable reducing the topic to single versus multiple LI books being good or better than another. Because I think there's single LI books that I feel like are kind of weak. And I guess, like, if I did have to put a stake in the ground between them, I mean, yes, single LI books, because it allows them to devote more time to where. Because I think here's the thing with multiple LI books. In order to get to know all of them, you kind of have to pay diamonds, right? With the single LI book, it's kind of inevitable that you're going to get to some portion of the plot where you're going to like the character because you're just spending more time with them. But, like, Witness is a single LI book, and that was like that was like watching a plane crash in slow motion. So I wouldn't necessarily say automatically single LI. Well, I mean, he did say they tend to be better books. So yeah, he's giving some leeway. But I just don't think at this point I feel comfortable saying books should move to be single LIs because they're typically better. I don't think I feel comfortable making that statement. But I see you're definitely not the only person who has posed this question to me. Like, I've seen this take multiple times before, and I get where it comes from. I just don't feel comfortable putting a stake in the ground on that one yet. Okay. Last question is, should character development, well, last question from this email, let me preface. Should character development be hidden so much behind a paywall? I recently found out Drake from the Royal Romance is way more interesting than I ever knew because I started discussing choices with new people who bought his diamond scenes. Currently, you really have a minimum chance to get to know someone before you have to decide who to romance, and once you decide, you don't really get to know the other characters unless you romance all characters. Yeah, I feel like we've tackled this one on the podcast. It's pretty
Absolutely.
frustrating to see how much character development is put behind paywalls. So yeah, I would say from the both of us, it's pretty safe to say we agree with you that a lot of
Hmm.
too much character development is hidden behind diamonds. And then he ended the email saying, "Keep up the great work and hope to hear your thoughts on the above." So it's Eric. That's Eric Mitch. So NERICMITCH on Twitter. I love Eric. Eric is so funny. I've actually talked to Eric vocally before. So thanks so much, Eric, for writing in. Thank you for always updating us and how you feel about the episode every Saturday. I look forward to seeing your tweets every weekend, so thanks for writing in. Someone said, I really enjoyed the Bloodbound chapter. It's one of my favorite books on the app. It's up there with It Lives in the Woods and Perfect Match, and it's so interesting listening back to what happened in the very first chapter. Well, thank you so much. I was just wondering what the process is when it comes to picking a book to cover for the podcast. Are they fan suggestions? What you think would be entertaining to talk about? Anything that isn't rules of engagement? God damn. Also, I really did miss bingo this week. Okay, so we are going to bring bingo onto Bloodbound. I was just having a hard week, so we didn't do it that week, but we are going to bring bingo into Bloodbound next time we cover it. It's so fun to listen to when you know the entire story, but probably also fun to speculate and theorize when you don't. I'll let Lucas comment on that. And are going through it episode by episode. Thanks. I think this person's name is Marilini. At least that's the way they signed off because they said we don't have to keep them anonymous. So thank you so much for writing in. So the question is, how do you pick a book to cover for the podcast? It's a mix of everything. It's what we're interested in, what the fans are requesting, because we definitely have people come out and request books for us to cover specifically. And yeah, sure, we can also put the criteria of anything that isn't rules of engagement, because I do hate that book. But also what's relevant on the app, for sure. Like, we're releasing an episode on Laws of Attraction that will probably come out before this episode actually goes out. Just because it's something that's recent, we know people are going to be playing it, so it just makes sense to kind of release it on the same schedule as when it's coming out. So, thanks for writing in. What are the most
I'm
what are the
scared.
most what are the most useless characters in Pixelberry?
Oh my god. Okay, so we got um we got what's his name? Ramsey? Bye.
uh
Bye. Who else do we have? We have the we just talked about them. Bo and Martin from Law of Attraction. I think that's all I got.
Okay, I'm just gonna scroll through the books really quickly and give you my thoughts. Anybody from Rules of Engagement? Sorry, not sorry. Most of the side characters in Royal Romance. I will second the Ethan Ramsey comment. I think he was such a great character in the first couple books, but the more he gets into the series, the more I kind of just look at him and wonder what he's adding to the series at this point. Anyone in Baby Bump, Jenny from the Nanny Affair. I'm so sorry, baby girl. You're supposed to be our main character's best friend. I just don't know where you went during the plot. Anyone in Passport to Romance, anyone in Witness. Fucking hate those books. Any of the allies who you choose to not romance in My First Two Loves, they are so fucking useless, and you string them along for the entire book, and I felt so bad for them. I need a list of like the most popular choices app characters, so I can just rip into them and say which ones are useless. Okay, I'm not going to do that because that's going to take too long. But yeah, those are just kind of off the top of my head thoughts. Robin from the Nanny Affair, because it's a single eye book, so nothing ever happens with Robin, and it's quite frustrating to watch. Alright, before we move on to the rest of the chapter, let me interrupt to plug our socials. We are at Playchoices Podcast on Instagram and at PlayChoicesPod on Twitter. You can also go to playchoicespodcast.tumblr.com for our Tumblr page, which is where I post any episode notes that I have, like links to posts that I've mentioned, photos I've mentioned, or more. We're also available for listening on all major platforms, so if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, please rate, review, and subscribe. It's a funky thing with the algorithm that helps us a lot. I wish I could explain it more in depth, but I just know that it helps us, so we do appreciate any reviews that you leave us. And as always, we are a growing podcast, so if you see us pop up on your socials, we do appreciate a share, a retweet, or a reblog, depending on the platform you see us on. We also appreciate it when you share our podcast with your fellow choices-loving friends. And now, back to the episode. Alright, so we only have a couple more questions to go. Next question is, do you think that the Choices app days are numbered, or will they improve later on this year and the next one, 2022, or will they become chapters 2.0? Y'all, this is a loaded motherfucking question.
Oof. Okay. My first initial thought is though is like they are trying to be progressive, but like they're not really doing a good job at it. It's giving me very like like constellation prize. Like it's not giving me very trophy worthy material. Um, so like it's like I appreciate the effort, but not like the dedication. I guess I would say they just need to get it together a little bit. As far as choices being like numbered, that's probably a question that you can answer because you have more of a widespread viewpoint because you've been using the app.
I'm not gonna sit here and lie and like say that I haven't been disappointed with the content that's come out in 2020 or the news that's come out in the beginning of 2021. Like, I'm not gonna lie about that, but frankly, I do think that all of the commentary about choices is gonna die and their fan's gonna fade away, I feel like all that shit's really overstated. They've been pivoting their content for a year, right? So if it was really going downhill that bad, I think they would have been able to pivot their content by now. What I think is happening, there's a very vocal minority who's unhappy with the content, but I think there's a silent majority that's feeding into this stuff. It's the Facebook bombs. And I'm not saying they're all on Facebook. I'm not saying they're all middle-aged, and I'm not saying they're all moms. But let's just call them that group. There are a group of people who are pushing for LIs to be forced like Ethan Ramsey. There's a reason why they're doing that shit, you guys. It's because there's an audience for that. So this whole like choices days are numbered, maybe for a certain subsection of the fandom. Maybe the fandom that came in 2018, 2019 are going to fade away. I already see stuff all the time of people announcing that they're leaving, but I don't think that they're actually going to die anytime soon, because I mean, fucking games that I think are way less quality, like Episode, have been going on for years and they're still going. And even if Pixelberry lowers their quality to that for the next 5 years, I think they're still going to continue. Like, there's always going to be people who are into this type of content. So I think this whole like Pixelberry is going to die, Choices is going to die stuff is way overstated. I think they'll lose a certain part of their fandom as they pivot to new content, but I don't think that necessarily means death. In short, there's a reason why they're pivoting content. They're not doing it just to be assholes. They're doing it because it's a formula that works, unfortunately, as much as it may displease the rest of us. Now, I've also heard people try to make the excuse that it's because of the pandemic and people have to work remote, this impacting the quality of the content. I will have to say I don't necessarily fall for that excuse because I've been working remotely since March of last year. And personally, the industry that I work in, we're doing really well despite remote work. I know that's a lot of companies are probably even more productive working from home. So I don't really believe, I mean, maybe there's something about the creative process, about writing a book that I'm missing that may not be present when you're working from home. But I feel like some people are trying to give the excuse of like, oh, it's because it's a pandemic. I don't think it's a fucking reason. I don't think it's the reason. I think the reason is because they have seen users continue to pay money or maybe even pay more money for this different type of content that may require less work or may require pivoting in a more direction. I think they're probably doing fine, honestly. Will they improve later on this year? I mean, maybe. I don't know. Maybe there are a lot of really vocal, unpleased fans. So maybe they'll take that into account and improve. Because, I mean, they've gotten so much shit for Open Heart Book 3. Maybe they'll take that to heart. Maybe they won't. Will they become Chapters 2.0? I've never played Chapters. I'm assuming it's not good based off of the way you phrase that question. But it's hard to say. It's hard to say if they're going to change or if they continue with the same quality. How much are you looking forward to the new zombie book that's getting released soon? I don't really know if I'd say I'm looking forward to it. I'm interested by it. I fucking love zombie-inspired media. Like, I just, one of my, like, favorite genres that I can always get into. I think it'll be interesting because a zombie book is not something you can necessarily, like, push romance all the way through, right? It's very survival. If it pivots back towards the type of genre that we saw in like Hero or in Most Wanted, I'd be so fucking excited. I struggle to see how in a zombie book they would make it as romance focused as some of the other books have been. So that's probably the only reason why I'm looking really forward to it, but I can't say that I'm overly excited about it. I'm just kind of intrigued in how they're going to handle that.
And for me, well, I am the opposite. I favor more like supernatural, but not zombie, like werewolf, witch, vampire, all that type of stuff. So it'll be interesting to see if this book catches my eye once we start playing it.
Okay, so this next question is, do you guys have a favorite book or series? Yes. Platinum, Ride or Die, Perfect Match, Desire and Decorum. I have some nostalgia for the Freshman series, but I can't tell if that's just because it's the first book I played in the app or if it's actually good. But I'll go ahead and throw that in there. Lucas, you haven't finished a series, but is there any one that you feel like particularly strongly about?
Ride or Die. I really liked Queen Bee. I think that's
Mother of the Year, also very underrated standalone book. Love it. God damn it, this next question. Why does V have such bad taste? Clearly she must have bad taste if she dislikes The Crown and the Flame. That's from Eric, you fucking asshole. Y'all, these fantasy books are so difficult for me to get into. I know I'm gonna get roasted on this, but I did not finish reading Blades. I know. Listen, I'm a moment of silence for the Twitter replies I'm gonna get for that one. I know. It's just so hard for me to get into fantasy like that. It's very difficult. Like, werewolves and vampires and zombies, right? There's a certain level of realism in the sense that there's not magic. Once you start adding magic and shit to stuff, that's when my brain is like, what the fuck? Like, I don't know what it is. Something about that element. I'm just like, what the fuck is happening? And then when they start speaking like fucking Shakespeare, that's when you really kick me out of the genre. That's when I'm like, oh my god. So why does V have bad taste? Maybe you have bad taste, Eric. Fuck off. I'm just kidding. I love Eric. Allies that are underrated in your opinion.
I don't know if I have enough knowledge to say what's rated and underrated. I'm like B's shoes, just out of the loop.
Oh my god. Zoe Wade from Queen Bee.
Bryce,
I'll agree with that. I'll second that.
because compared to the other ally, they have a whole ship name, so obviously, like,
Right. Yeah, I don't know of any ship names for Bryce. Ava from My First Two Loves. She's the one that really got me in the end. Colt and Mona from Ride or Die. I mean, they're not my ally of choice, but I think they're fucking fantastic. Robin is not an ally, but I'm gonna say Robin from the Nanny Affair. What the fuck? Why couldn't we fuck him at least once? Probably any ally that isn't Kamala or Adrian from Bloodbound. I just feel like they don't really get enough love, especially Lily. Any ally that isn't Thomas from Mother of the Year. Any ally that isn't Mark Antony from A Cartesian of Rome. Yeah, that's all I can think of right now. How did V come across choices and what drew you in? Again, this is one of those things where it was so long ago I can't even really remember. I probably found it via an ad and started playing it to pass the time. What drew me in? I mean, really, Zig from the Freshman series, which is sad to say because that was in book 2. I thought the Freshman series was interesting and I really enjoyed the plot, but the allies really didn't grab me until I met Zig, and that's when I kind of started to explore the rest of the app. I mean, Lucas, I introduced you to choices, but feel free to answer that question.
Logan, duh.
Logan is like the only reason that Lucas does this podcast. He told me to my face that when we finish Ride or Die, he's leaving me.
Yeah, actually, we have to be honest with you guys. The real reason for this podcast is to raise awareness for our decision in order to make the second Ride or Die.
Mm-hmm.
If you guys do notice that the first chapter of V coming back is that topic. So,
Mm-hmm.
if you guys could like, share, V will plug our socials.
Was that the end of the sentence? You're gonna keep talking.
That was the end. I got self-conscious because I was like, oh, not being a monologue.
From an objective standpoint, what do you think the best choices book/series is? What does objective mean? Like, I feel like it's hard for me to be objective about this. I feel like the answer has to be subjective. If I was going to go into from an objective standpoint, I feel like my objective and subjective answer are the same, which is Ride or Die.
Right.
I can't go into the objective reasons why because it'd be spoilers and I want Lucas to experience that book from fresh eyes. But from a subjective standpoint, such a good plot, such good characters, such a good message that I think a lot of people, not all people, but a lot of people can relate to.
Well, for right now, Ride or Die, yeah, most def.
Yeah, obviously we have favorites. Unlike most people, we do have favorite children on this podcast. And Ride or Die is our favorite child.
Period.
Who is your favorite character in Queen Bee?
Zoe. She's a blessing.
I'm gonna say the MC.
Oh, okay.
I actually really do like the MC and Queen Bee, and I feel like they're pretty reasonable throughout the entire book. Pretty much every main character kind of gets on my nerves, at least in one chapter in the book, but MC is just... I feel like she has a good head on her shoulders. Poppy, I haven't really got to talk to Poppy that much since we've only read chapter 1 together, but oh, she's a fucking bitch, but God, is she the only thing that makes the book, like, interesting. Well, I don't want to say the only thing, but God, she is such a good villain. Whoever wrote her, just chef's fucking kiss. She's an awful fucking person. And she's such a great character to, like, want to take down. I guess if I had to pick between the two, I'll pick Poppy. I think she keeps shit interesting. But the MC is so good because she's one of those characters you can root for who's also not a fucking pushover. I feel like so often in these kind of like girl conflict movies, it's always like the super, super good girl who like goes up against like Regina George. And I love that your character in Queen Bee can be as equally petty and as complicated as Poppy. I really respect that. Favorite moment from any books?
Damn, okay.
The scene where Toby wants to watch Logan and Ellie kiss. That was fucking hilarious.
That's a good scene. That is a good scene.
The scene where Logan takes off his clothes and runs around the block, either by himself or with Ellie. Those are both great. Oh, there's scenes in Ride or Die that I want to name, but I don't want to spoil them. There's a scene in Mother of the Year where it's like later on in the book, but it's where the MC kind of, oh, it's so good. It's so heartbreaking. It's a scene where the MC realizes that they don't have enough money to pay for their bills. It's so good. I mean, it's so well written. It's so relatable. It's so heartaching. I remember when I played through the internal dialogue in that scene, it just really, really got me.
If I had to say just one that's like literally like pops into my head is you realizing that Tatum is your security in foreign affairs. I don't know what it is about that scene,
His
but
dialogue scenes are great, dude. From what we've played so far, I loved his dialogue scenes. It's so
yes,
realistic.
yes, like, and that's why like Tatum and Gabe, I love them as allies because they do try to keep it professional. Like they do just
Mm-hmm.
really like listen, like it's my job to oversee you and your actions. Oh, love it. Just love it.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would say another scene from Ride or Die is it has to be the first chapter where he flies off the bridge. Cause I just think that's just if there's any moment or any scene in a book that just really says like, this is what you're getting yourself in for, it's that one and it's just such a good like scene.
I mean, if we wanted to be really extra, I would say like literally the entirety of Ride or Die, but I'm not gonna do that. What's your top romance book, seeing as there are many, but not many good ones? Y'all are fucking coming for this goddamn app with these questions. Listen, these are all listener submitted. I didn't write a single one of these, okay?
we are in the air.
Okay, so let me name the ones that we've read so far that are considered romance, because not all these are considered romance. Queen Bee, Ride or Die, Open Heart, The Nanny Affair. That's what we've read so far. So I'm looking at the choices wiki is how I'm defining this. Freshman is so good. It is, but it isn't. It's one of those series I kind of love to hate and hate to love, you know? Love Queen Bee. Desire and Decorum is another romance book that I really like. Ride or Die, of course. Open Heart, book 1. Oh, Laws of Attraction is also considered a romance book, so.
I mean, if I had to pick one right now, Ride or Die, Abby.
Avi Avi. Oh, it's top romance book. Okay, well then, if it's just one, then obviously Ride or Die. I was just naming all of them that I liked. And this is going to be our final question. What kind of story do you want choices to make that they haven't yet so far?
Ooh.
I mean, my hands down favorite genre of all time is any post-apocalyptic type of shit, right? And I don't necessarily mean zombies. Like zombies can fit into that category, but if you've ever played like a Fallout type of book or Fallout type of genre, like a Fallout 1 through what's the last one they did? We don't talk about 76 here. We ignore 76 and keep it to Fallout 4 because 76 was interesting. But any type of post-apocalyptic thing where any enemy or creature can be reasonably created by some scientific disaster and not necessarily something that's entirely fantasy, I just love that genre so much. I would love to see it in choices.
Ooh.
Oh, and let me also mention this while it's on the top of my brain. The teen dystopia genre that got abandoned in like the mid like 2010s. There was that surge of like the Hunger Games and
Yep.
the
Divergent.
Divergent stuff. Like the teen dystopia genre is so good. I miss that. Again, I can't tell if it's actually good or if I'm just very nostalgic because I grew up with it when I was a teenager. But those, oh god, those stories were so good, and I would love to see something like that recreated in choices.
I'm thinking like a murder mystery,
Hmm.
like a Clue type, or maybe like just even like a LA Noir type scene. You know,
Mm-hmm.
something like that, something copy.
So I do kind of have one book is called Most Wanted that kind of reminds me the most of that, but they don't have too many of them. All right, well, that was all of our questions. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for submitting your questions. I hope that we answered them in a way that satisfied your curiosity. But yeah, thanks so much for joining me, Lucas.
Oh, always, always.
And thank you for listening. Hope everyone has a good rest of their day, evening, morning, whatever time you're listening to this out. Bye.
Bye, guys.